All right, and that's where we begin. The Electoral Commission has confirmed that it's approaching the Constitutional Court to seek leave to appeal the Electoral Court's recent ruling in favour of the uMkhonto Sizwe Party. And let's get you more reaction on this. Bring in now the IEC's CEO, Sizwe Mamabolo, who joins us via our video link. And Mr. Mamabolo, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Let me just start off plainly by asking why you've decided to head to the Constitutional Court.
The Commission was of the view that there's overriding and substantial interest from the public to secure a clear understanding of the interpretation of Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution, in particular its interplay with the powers of the Commission to deal with objections that are submitted to candidates. So this matter really, or rather the appeal, it's about securing clarity so that all role players can understand what that constitutional provision is, how it ought to be interpreted, and that for the future, everybody then knows with certainty and legal clarity as to what that provision provides for and does not provide for.
Yeah, questions already being raised around whether or not that clarity couldn't have come from the Electoral Court, who initially made that decision. I mean, I asked this question fully aware that the Electoral Court gave an order, so none of us really have the reasons behind why they found in the way they have. But speak to us about that particular step, so to speak, about heading to the Electoral Court first before the Apex Court.
Well, the reality is that the Constitutional Court is the apex court, is the highest court of the land, and it's important that clarity is sought from that highest court in the land, because views are divergent. And if we were to go, for instance, to the SCA, there may well be another appeal to the Constitutional Court. So you go to the highest court that has constitutional jurisdiction for certainty and clarity once and for all.
Yeah, I know you've tried to address this in your statement, but the MK party, who I spoke to a short while ago here, is convinced that this is tantamount to the IEC entering the political fray. They're of the view that the IEC has nothing to lose by allowing the order from the Electoral Court to stand. What's your response to that?
No, they are mistaken. It is not so. The IEC remains impartial. It remains committed to an even administration of the electoral process. This has nothing really to do against prejudice towards them. What this intends to do is to realize and procure legal certainty for this election as well as for future election. And this is not to be confused with the ballot design issues. The principles that underpin the ballot design is that the photograph on the ballot would be of the registered party leader, irrespective of whether that party leader is a candidate in the election or not. And in that regard, we've clarified that issue with MK, and in the ballot confirmation process, it has been signed on that basis and on that understanding. So there cannot be accusations of partiality. All we seek is that that legal principle be clarified once and for all, so that all role players, all stakeholders, and indeed all voters know what a correct legal interpretation is in terms of candidature, where in instances where people have convictions.
Yeah, all right. What you've just said, I think, is very significant, Mr. Mamabolo. So no matter how the Electoral Court finds, even if this case were to get there, the icon, let's say, of the former president can still remain on the ballot box when South Africans head to the polls on the 29th of May. Is that right?
It is so if he is now, he's been replaced. He's the party leader. We have formal correspondence in that regard, and to the extent that he is now the party leader, he will be the face on the ballot papers. And if there's nothing that proves our sincerity, it is precisely that. Because in terms of the principles that the Commission established, is that we will use the following identifiers on the ballot paper: the full party name, its abbreviated name, its logo, and the photograph of the registered party leader. And to the extent that the erstwhile president is the registered party leader, we have accorded with those principles in the design of the ballot paper. So we have nothing really prejudicial against anyone. We just need clarity on that constitutional provision for members of the public, for all political role players, as well as for the voting public.
That's interesting, because what I'm then hearing from you, Mr. Mamabolo, is that even if a registered party leader is ineligible to be an office bearer, their icon can still be represented on the ballot paper, which is interesting, because what message does that send to the voter?
Well, you may not be a candidate necessarily, but it doesn't take away that you are a registered leader of that party and you represent its fortunes, including its electoral fortunes. So that's the principle which the Commission applies. And I think it's a different conception from the constitutional provisions to be a candidate, which is what we are now dealing with by way of appeal. Right. And it's important that we clarify the distinction.
Absolutely. And just one more question on that, because of the need for clarity, I suppose. So for argument's sake, if the IEP, for example, wanted to have the face of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi on the ballot paper, that also, I suppose, would be allowed to, if he is still the registered party leader of the IFP, even though we know that because of issues to do with mortality, he's unlikely to land up in Parliament.
No, look, fortunately, or whatever, he is not, Prince Buthelezi is no longer the registered party leader. The registered party leader now is Mr. Shabisa, and we will work in accordance with that reality.
Yeah, okay, this was a hypothetical question, obviously, Mr. Mamabolo.
Yeah, look, hypothetical questions tend to have difficulty because, they tend to be speculative. But fortunately, we have a reality that does not deal with that hypothetical situation. The reality is that post this election, there may be a need to fortify some provisions. For instance, if a person is deceased, it doesn't really sit well to have them on the ballot paper when everybody knows that that person is deceased, even if they remain a registered party leader. So those are things that will have to go into the review of the framework after this election, so that we clean them up and we firm up the regulatory framework.
All right, I won't push any further, but I hear you. I wonder then if you could just let us in on the time constraints that are involved here, Mr. Mamabolo, because of course the IEC has to keep up with your own election timetable, and it's very difficult. I mean, I think it was one of your commissioners who said that once the train starts moving, it's almost impossible to stop it. If this is still something that you need to consider, and I'm talking now about the Constitutional Court's findings on this, how is that likely, if at all, to complicate your ability to keep up with the timetable? Fortunately, this matter has no bearing on the printing of ballots, for instance, because it is just a candidate. The list remains competent, and the party remains on the ballot, and so on. It's just the candidature of a single person. So it has no bearing on that, fortunately. But of course, it would be important that that clarity is provided before the election, so that the voting public can know what is the correct legal position. All right, fair enough. Sizwe Mamabolo, thanks for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on the SABC News Channel. Sizwe Mamabolo is the CEO of the IEC. All right, it raises all kinds of questions, what we've just learned. Hopefully, some of the answers will be forthcoming.